Welcome to the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast. I'm Gerry Scott, founder of the Snowbirds US Day Tracker and the Canada Physical Presence Tracker app. Hello, everybody. I'm Gerry Scott. I'm the creator of the Snowbird US Day Tracker, and I'm also your host of the Snowbird Expat Radio Podcast. Before we introduce today's guest, I just wanted to bring you a couple of updates on the app. And if you could take a look at the actual menu on the top right-hand corner, you'll see that there's a little drop-down menu. And in that drop-down menu, you're going to find resources, you're going to find USD, and you're going to find travel insurance. Well, we're happy to report that once Jonathan is able to send me the link, Jonathan is today's guest, and I'll go into more details on his bio. But once we get that link, you're going to find that you're going to be able to buy travel insurance through Manulife, one of the top providers in Canada of travel insurance. You're going to be able to find the quotes. You're going to be able to purchase travel insurance. And you're also going to be able to get support through Manulife as well when you do purchase and you have to experience a claim. And I have to tell you that I've been involved with travel insurance for many years. I've been going back and forth to Maui since 1981. And I've always been lectured that do not spend any time in a U.S. hospital without a travel insurance policy because it can get very expensive. And the horror stories that our guest will go into today they are real. If you don't have travel insurance, it can bankrupt you if you break a leg or get sick or whatever the case is. So once again, once we have the link, it'll be on the app. You'll be able to click on it and take you directly to Manulife Travel Insurance. Now, a little bit about our guest today, Jonathan Liang from, before we went on air, we were talking about Mike being from Toronto and Jonathan being from Toronto. So I was kind of left out of the conversation. It happens a lot with Mike. Whenever someone jumps on, it seems like they've got more in common with Mike than myself. But anyhow, I'm just all joking aside. So Jonathan moved from Toronto to Vancouver in 2019. He is the manager of Affinity Services products through Manulife. He's been heavily involved in the insurance industry for many years, from actuarial services to property and casualty insurance. And he brings a world of experience to travel insurance. So, these podcasts are based on questions that we get back, and we always get a ton of questions on travel insurance. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show. We look forward to asking you some very difficult questions. And so if you could turn on your mic, I will ask you these questions. And we always go easier to harder as we get more into the actual conversation. So the first question I have for you, Jonathan, is current travel advisories in place by the Canadian government. What is happening out there, and how is it ranked from severity? Is it a color-coded system, or and where can we find that information?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good question. So the government of Canada has an official website. It can be easily accessible by just going on Google and search up Canadian Government Travel Advisory. It should be the first link that pops up. Like you mentioned, the travel advisories are color-coded, but the easiest way to understand it is by the description of the travel advisory. So the lowest / the best case possible will be the case where there's no travel advisory at all. And that will be indicated by a green check mark for those specific countries. And then the one level up will be traveling with caution, right? So these are sort of the next level up. These are sort of the orange kind of travel advisories. These are not that severe, but there are some dangerous / activities going on in a country that they want to travel to that the client should be mindful of. Like quick example would be like burglary or theft or like conflicts between governments, things like that. And then the next level up, this is where things kind of change a little bit from, hey, you can still go to you really shouldn't go. Right. So that next level will be avoid non-essential travel. Right. So this is we're getting to the red sort of color-coded category. So in these situations, it's called the avoid non-essential travel. The government is basically saying that, hey, due to whatever's going on, if you don't have to go, you shouldn't really go, right? And then the next level up would be avoid all travel altogether, right? Doesn't matter what you're doing, you should really, really cancel your trip. So it's kind of like ranked from least severe to the most severe scenario there.
Okay, and we can our next question, great segue into COVID and what happened during COVID. So when we actually did have COVID, and our second question will be, is there still a threat of COVID out there? But the first question is, when we're dealing with COVID back in 2019 to 2021, I'm assuming that it was red, do not travel.
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. So in that sense, like when the pandemic happened, right? This was that goes all the way back to March 2020 when the world turned upside down. So the government issued a avoid non-essential travel advisory for all countries outside of Canada, right? So like I mentioned before, that's basically getting into that red territory where if you really don't have to travel, you really shouldn't travel, right? And of course, there are exceptions for people who are like essential services, right? We all heard about essential services such as like travel doctors, travel nurses, truck drivers, right? Um, the livelihood for these people are dependent on them traveling to other countries. So of course, these folks are exempt from that.
Now, I apologize because I think I mentioned it was 2019, but obviously it was March 2020 because we were in Maui, and I think we had till the 17th to come home. March 17th, they said, get home. We have a bit of a problem. So my next question out there, is there any threat of COVID out there right now from a Manulife perspective, yeah.
So from an insurance company perspective, our insurance coverages are heavily tied with the travel advisory, right? If you think about insurance as a general concept, it just means that it protects you in an unforeseen situation. With that being said, if there are adequate amount of warnings saying, hey, this risk is to be expected, and the clients decide to take on that risk, of course, insurance companies don't want to take on that burden. Therefore, it's not going to be covered. So all in all, it's tied heavily with the travel advisory. Manulife as a company, like during the pandemic, like just back to 2020 for a second, March 2020 advisory got raised. We didn't have a coverage for a long period of time. It was not until probably October or November 2020 that's when we came up with a coverage that will cover your clients for COVID-19, even when there is a travel advisory going on, right? So let's fast forward to today then. Actually, good news. I was actually looking at the travel advisories this morning. So as of recent, unvaccinated travelers now also have a dropped travel advisory for them. So before today, let's just say this week, the travel advisory was not there anymore, only for vaccinated travelers. Vaccinated just means 2 doses, right? But as of this morning, the travel advisory was dropped for all Canadians traveling to other countries, regardless of their vaccination status for COVID-19. So what does that mean for insurance companies? Well, like I mentioned before, travel advisories are heavily tied to the coverage. So with this drop in travel advisory for vaccinated and unvaccinated travelers alike, it just means that all of our insurance coverage now will cover COVID-19. With a caveat on top of that being only the emergency medical coverage will cover them for COVID-19 situations as of right now, because there's no travel advisories. But when it comes to cancellation coverage, trip interruption coverage, insurance companies like Manulife and of course other providers as well is still considered as a known event, which means that the coverage for cancellation insurance due to COVID is still limited.
Okay. That's great news because, if we're not being divided by religion and we're being divided by politics,
That's
and then
right.
sadly, we were being divided by either believing in vaccinations or not believing in it. So my next question is that at the beginning of the podcast, we talked about the severity of, if something was to happen and you didn't have insurance in the United States, health insurance. So what is the big difference between Canada healthcare and United States healthcare?
Yeah, so it's kind of like night and day between Canada and the US and other countries as well. The Canadian health system is kind of government funded, so it's more like a public health system, which means that there's really no private competitions outside of the general health system. Versus outside of Canada, majority of the countries have a privatized healthcare system. What this means is that there's more competition, right? Competition just means that, hey, you can have a set of price for one hospital, and then you walk down the street, that hospital will have another set of prices, right? So there will be less regulations when you are in the US, for example. And then just in terms of the fee that's being charged by these privatized healthcare systems are generally higher than what is offered compared to a public healthcare system. Right. So that's definitely one thing to watch out for, especially like you mentioned that you goes to Maui a lot, Gerry, right? So like Maui, for example, like a lot of the treatments there are gonna be coming at a higher price tag than if you get the treatment uh, for the same treatment at a Toronto hospital or at a Vancouver hospital. So that's definitely something to watch out for. And this goes to say why travel insurance is so important, right? Because when you're outside Canada, you don't know how much a service is going to cost you. But having travel insurance just make sure you have that coverage.
Yeah, so knowing hospitals charge different prices. So how does Manulife look at that? And am I supposed to just drop off myself or my wife or our daughter? Do we just go to the hospital, or do we have to? Is there selected hospitals that travel insurance deal with because it's cheaper for the insurance companies? Or should we even be concerned about that?
I do not think this is a big concern for travelers, because from an insurance point of perspective, if the client needs an emergency service, we're not going to penalize the client if they don't go to a preferred hospital, right? I mean, just give you an example. Let's just say somebody gets into a car accident and they call the ambulance, and the ambulance is not going to know who the Manulife's preferred hospital is. So they're just going to drive to the nearest facility for them to get treatments, right? So from an insurance company point of perspective, we're not going to penalize them for that, right? So when it comes to the claims process, it's ideal that the clients contact, for example, Manulife as soon as they can. So we have an idea of where they are, what type of treatments they're receiving. Then the insurance company can establish a direct connection between the insurance company and the hospital. So this is a beneficial point for the insurers, actually the clients as well, because it eliminates the clients as a sort of a middle person between the insurance company and the hospital. All they have to do is worry about getting their health back on track, getting the treatments they needed, and get better, right? So yeah, this is not a big worrisome point, I would say. Just make sure you let Manulife or the insurance company know what's going on, and then we will take care of the rest.
Okay, point well taken. Stupid question. Okay. So really, what is the difference between, there's so many types of insurance. You can buy an individual policy. You can get something on your credit card. You can get something off when you buy it through a travel agency, group insurance through our employers. Tell me the big difference. And is there a first pay, second pay lineup when it comes to the different kind of coverages that individual would own?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just take myself as an example here, Gerry. So myself, I have 5 different credit cards, and I have my group insurance with Manulife, and I also have some other options for me to purchase individual insurance as well. So technically, I have 3 options for myself to get travel insurance coverage. Now, let's talk about credit card first. I'm one of those people who like to read policy wordings, right? So I normally read through the policy wordings in full when I sign up a contract. And credit cards, I did spend some time to look over that. Credit card coverages are quite limited, and a lot of people don't know that, right? Credit card companies are not in the business for insurance offerings. They're in the business to provide a credit card service. Insurance is just a perk. So in that sense, their insurance coverages are not 100% in line with a dedicated product that is offering one special insurance service by itself. So just some common areas to watch out for is the fact that age is an issue with credit card coverage, right? Many companies have set a limitation on how old they have to be, and it also sets amount of days they need to be traveling in order for the credit card to cover them. And the second thing is around the pre-existing conditions. So if the client has a medical condition, you really got to watch out for the wordings to see how long the condition has to be stable for in order for the credit card companies to cover that. Now, I mentioned these two things, but I just want to make that comment that credit card coverages, when it comes to these sort of aspects, generally has more restrictions than standalone or other types of insurance coverages, right? Because going back to what I said earlier, credit card companies are not in the business of doing insurance. So really check out those wordings to make sure you have sufficient coverage. Group insurance is great. Group insurance, I do think, is a wonderful product when it comes to travel insurance. However, it's limited to only travel medical insurance most of the time. So that means if you get sick, if you get injured outside of country, you're covered. With that being said, if your flight gets canceled, if you get sick, you cannot go on the trip, you're out of luck with group insurance. So when it comes to group insurance, my suggestion here would be just to look at other sources of insurance coverage to protect yourself against those non-refundable trip costs or unexpected costs down the road. And of course, last one is the individual travel insurance route. I think individual travel insurance is a great way for you to top up your existing coverage if you have credit cards and group insurance. And with those things I mentioned earlier, those are the things you should watch out for. And if that's not sufficient for you, you should look at individual insurance as a top up.
One of the things that we discussed a couple of weeks ago when we were preparing for the show here, we were talking about, did the insurance companies really lose a lot of money during COVID? Mm-hmm. And, it's always nice to be in a position to ask an expert a lot of questions, because I was surprised that it wasn't so much about the health claims. It was more about the canceling of trips that was expensive for Manulife or these other providers in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Gerry, I just want to go back to you quickly using your example. So you mentioned that when the world shut down back in 2020, you were in Maui, right, at that point, right? And then the government issued a travel advisory saying everybody should come back by March 20th or the 19th. I don't remember the specific date, but they're just saying everybody should come back, right? Now, let's just say you get into a situation where that was only the beginning of your trip, and you still have 7 days, 14 days left of hotel bookings. What are you going to do then? Right? You're forced to come back, but you lose all the money you have paid for the hotel already. And then the hotel is saying, sorry, it's not our fault. We're not going to give you money back. So situations like that, right, did cause a lot of cancellation / trip interruption claims for insurance companies, Manulife being one of them. However, during the pandemic, over the last couple of years, there's a lot of losses incurred by the client due to these couple of things. One is the quarantine coverage, right? So once we release the COVID-19 coverage, a lot of people are traveling, right, in the midst of the pandemic, and they were faced with many, many different sort of risks of contracting COVID outside of Canada. Now, if they do contract COVID, as we all remember, you're forced to quarantine for like 14 days or 28 days, depending on which country they're in. But our coverages also has that quarantine coverage included, right? So we cover like 14 days of hotel, up to $200, $250 a day for meals and expenses, etc., related to the quarantine. That's a big sort of source of losses for insurance companies, right? And then, yeah, so as a whole, like as an industry, this is not just Manulife, right? Our competitors, our other friends in the business, everybody has incurred losses due to cancellation, interruption, and quarantine coverages. Like as a whole, we probably lost years of insurance profit. So basically, we're back to square one right now, trying to rebuild up that sort of revenue stream when it comes to insurance.
Now, has that affected, are we finding that prior to the COVID insurance, travel insurance was this amount? Now, did we see a huge increase for the price of insurance going forward?
That's a good question. So going forward, I wouldn't say huge increases are going to be expected in the near future, but there will be slight price adjustments as well. So some companies in the industry are already starting to do that. Like over the last couple months, we have seen a couple providers increasing their price, right? And then Manulife, we are also reassessing our books right now. We don't have an official rate adjustments or anything like that yet, but it is in the sort of assessment period because we have to look at our claims ratios in the past, and companies will readjust the rates if needed.
A lot of insurance advisors for years, we know the importance of travel insurance, but a lot of them didn't sell it until we started seeing these links and making it easy and letting Manulife get more involved. But one thing I want to really ask is what is generally not in what the insurance companies do not pay when it comes to travel insurance.
Absolutely. So some common exclusions that everyone should watch out for. So I'll give you a couple points here. So first one is extreme sports, right? So extreme sports, some quick examples would be like rock climbing, right? The type of rock climbing that you need specialized equipments like carabiners, ropes, helmets, those kind of stuff. So extreme sports like that would not be covered. And also snorkeling is one of them as well. Snorkeling and scuba diving, right? That's a common exclusion among all insurance companies. I would say all, actually, most insurance companies. With that being said, you can get a specialized, scuba diving insurance on the side as well. Another common example for exclusions would be paid professional sports, right? So we do see clients from time to time, they're traveling to other countries to play professional sports. They're getting paid to play. Some quick examples like AHL players, NHL players, just quick examples, they want to get some sort of insurance to cover them on the ice while they get injured. But due to the fact that they're getting paid for it, that will be excluded sort of activity that we don't cover. Jumping from sports activities, another common example is pregnancy, right? A lot of clients who are pregnant, they also want to travel and they're expecting their baby, so they just want to make sure that everything is covered while they're traveling. So do be careful with exclusions. There are limitations around how long into the pregnancy they need to be in order for the insurance company to cover it. And a common exclusion around pregnancy is the fact that childbirth in a foreign country, the actual cost of hiring a mid-person to deliver the baby, the hospital expenses for the delivery procedure, that's generally excluded from the policy. The last thing I want to mention is around pre-existing conditions, right? So for pre-existing conditions, like just say somebody with a diabetic condition or a high blood pressure condition, they worry about those conditions triggering something else happening on the trip. With that being said, you really have to worry about how stable that condition is, whether it's 3 months prior to departure, 6 months prior to departure. You just got to make sure that condition is stable in order for the insurance company to cover it. If it's not stable, let's just say the client just went to the hospital the day before traveling, right, for some emergency medical issues, and then they decided to go travel the next day. That condition that happened before the travel day is not stable, therefore insurance company is not covering it.
It's very interesting because I think when people do shop travel insurance, it's being priced as a commodity, and sadly, a lot of these people aren't fully disclosing their preconditions. And I would imagine that there would be one of the questions for a female when they were applying for insurance: are you pregnant? I'm sure there's all kinds of medical questions that one would go through, but this is the whole idea of travel insurance. Is by no means are we trying to scare everybody. We just want to make sure that people are well covered, and they're transferring that risk to the insurance company. Full disclosure, because I priced out an insurance policy for myself, and just recently, and I think it was going to be $1,300 for a multi-trip package and all the bells and whistles. You get the ice cream cone after the examination, or whatever the case is. I mean, it had everything in the policy, and I still weigh out $1,300, which seems like a lot of money. That's 1,300 Canadian. That could turn into something pretty severe based on US dollars if I ever had to have emergency coverage in the United States. So tell me a little bit about the claims, the process, and what happens and when a person comes across this terrible event and they have to make a claim on their insurance. What is the process? What do we do?
Absolutely. So I'll share my personal story with this. This actually happened earlier this year. It's actually for my own mother. So she purchased a travel insurance policy with Manulife. So she flew into San Francisco and took the drive down to Los Angeles, and she flew back. Well, she planned to fly back from there. And 2 days before her flight back, she went hiking one of the trails near Santa Barbara, and she unfortunately I'll put in quotes, twisted her ankle. That's what she thought was happening when she got hurt. Then she got home, she was icing her ankle, and then it just got worse and worse. The swelling started to start. And then she's like, okay, I gotta go check out this condition at the hospital. It might be a fracture. Now, she called the insurance company while she's getting a drive to the hospital saying, hey, look, just so you know, my leg is hurting. I don't know if it's a fracture or a sprain, but I'm going to this hospital to check it out. All right. So then the insurance company, slash Manulife took down their information, just where they're going, what's the policy number, and then what's the contact information for the hospital. So, and then she went to the waiting room. While she was waiting, it was like an hour or two wait time, which is quite good for all things considered. So while she's in the waiting room, the insurance company called back. It's like, just checking in to make sure you got to the hospital okay. Like anything updates, just let us know. She's like, no, we're still waiting to see the doctor. And then the insurance company, Manulife, just said, hey, look, we got in contact with the hospital. They're going to send us all the bills, the invoices that we need to process a claim. So when you check out the hospital, you don't have to pay anything. Just provide a signature saying you checked out. So fast forward, and then my mom saw a doctor. They provided some emergency treatments, stabilized her leg. So she was in and out under 10 hours, right? So next morning she checked out, signed a piece of paper saying she's been discharged, and that's good to go. And then she flew back to Canada and continued treatments while they're back in Canada, because when they're back in Canada, it's covered by the government health coverage, OHIP, MSP, Alberta Health, etc. But this general process, just basically about informing the insurance company, they don't have to, the client doesn't have to pay anything out of pocket if the direct relationship is set up with the hospital. Fast forward to today, the claims is still being processed right now because it's a pretty big number. It's in the tens of thousands. So the insurance company is in communication with the hospital directly about that. But as an insured, you don't really have to worry about anything, right? now is in the hands of the insurance company and the hospital.
Now, what happens if there is a deductible? I mean, some insurance policies, these travel insurance contracts, is there a deductible? And when is that deductible paid? Is it paid to the hospital? Is it paid to Manulife? I mean, how does that taken care of?
Yeah, so deductibles, so basically it's the amount that the client has to pay out of pocket first before the claim kicks in. Sorry, the reimbursement kicks in. So there are two options to do this. The first option would be the hospital sends the bill to the insurance company. Insurance company pays back the money to the hospital minus the deductible, right? Now the hospital is going to contact the client saying, hey, the insurance company paid this amount, but you still have a couple $100 outstanding because that's your deductible. How would you like to pay? So then the hospital is going to be in contact with the client, asking them to pay that deductible. Now, the other way would be the client pays the doctor first for their treatments, and then they can also submit a claim online for those reimbursements afterwards. If you do it that way, because they pay the full amount to the hospital already themselves, the clients, when they make a claim and when Manulife or insurance company pays the money back, they're just going to pay back the money minus the deductible back to the client.
Is there ever a time that the hospital could say, I'll tell you what, you pay, you owe this amount, and it's your responsibility to get the money back from the insurance company? How common is that?
It is not as common as you think, but it's more common than you thought.
Okay, it does happen.
It does happen. Yeah, I actually encountered a case like this a couple months ago where the client got into a argument slash a fight with the hospital staff over this. The client said, hey, look, I already contacted the Manulife, the insurance company. They said they will pay you. They said they will in contact with you. But the hospital is very insistent on the fact that the client pays first. The hospital said they don't deal with the insurance companies, so the client has to pay first and get the money back from the insurance company. Eventually, it was resolved. We got the Manulife folks involved. They called the hospital directly saying, look, we are a reputable firm. We will pay you the money to send us an invoice. And then finally, the hospital backed down
Okay.
on that. It is more common, sorry, these cases are more common among smaller hospitals slash community clinics or hospitals. For bigger hospitals in bigger cities, you don't really see these cases happen.
I would have to think, I mean, Manulife is a global brand.
Yeah.
So I would hope that most people wouldn't have to experience that. And that's another one of those questions, great segue into who are the top providers of travel insurance in Canada for snowbirds going down south?
For sure. So travel insurance is a growing industry, especially in the last couple of years, because we've seen a boom in tourism all across the world, right? Canadians, our populations are growing. More and more snowbirds clients are present. So insurance companies are also going up in terms of numbers. So some big contenders, some big partners in the industry in Canada would be Manulife. We Manulife still has the biggest market share in Canada as a Canadian-based company. And the second type of companies are like sort of global companies where they have a sort of a subsidiary in Canada. This will be one of the examples will be Allianz, right? Allianz is a European company, and then they kind of spread their wings all over North America, and Canada travel insurance is one of them. And then there are other players in the field as well. Like in BC, we have BCAA, which is the Automobile Association, but they're trying to expand into all areas of insurance these days: travel insurance, home insurance, auto insurance. Actually, when I was working in Toronto, my first job was with the Ontario CAA company. And when I left there, this was back in 2016 or 2015, 2016, they were just reamping their travel insurance product called Orion Travel Insurance. So as you can see, like firms like CAA or BCAA, they're also trying to push push their way through the door of travel insurance. And then other big companies such as Tugo. Tugo is another big Canadian brand. And you will also see different options through different associations as well. By associations, I mean places like Costco, right? Costco, if you have a membership, they advertise their travel insurance to their members. So that's a product that's also being underwritten by Manulife. It's just a different product. It's a different price. It's a different source of distribution. So all you know, so is Manulife, Allianz, CAA, BCAA, Tugo, and Costco. I say these are some of the major competitors out there in
Okay.
Canada.
Now, when it comes to products, I mean, we know about the single trip, the multi trip, but when you and I were discussing a couple of weeks ago, there's a product out there by Manulife, and it's called Travel 80. And the more I started reading about this and through our discussions, we had the discussions and I read a lot about it. Tell our listeners a little bit more about this product. And is this a pretty innovative product that's kind of changing the industry out there when it comes to travel insurance?
I do think so. I do think so. So this is one of the unique product that only Manulife offers. You won't hear this product from any other providers. So Travel 80, right? It's a multi-trip policy. By multi-trip, I mean you buy the policy and every single time you travel, you will have 30 days of coverage. Doesn't matter how many times you travel in a year or in 10 years, right? So it's a multi-trip policy that is guaranteed renewal every single year. At the time of application, the client will need to answer some medical questions, go through some simple medical underwriting. After they issue the policy, they can start traveling, right? And then every single year, the policy is guaranteed to renew. So they don't have to worry about resubmitting an application or something like that. As long as the premiums are paid, the policy will continue. Now, this policy will last until either age 80 or whenever the client wants to cancel the policy, whichever comes earlier, right? One of the biggest attractiveness of Travel 80 is the fact that the premiums are locked in based on the client's age at the time of application. So Gerry, let's just say you have a client that is age 40 or 45. They buy this policy at that age. Whatever they pay at that point is going to be the premium that they pay every single year going forward. This premium is not going to change due to their age year over year. So from a premium point of perspective, we all know insurance is kind of the older you get, the more premium you tend to pay, right? So this is more like a locked-in insurance that guarantees the premium once they get the policy. They don't have to worry about that. And then there are other perks as well, such as a return of premium option. So every 10 years, if they're claims free, they can get a portion of the premium back, right? Which is unheard of in the travel insurance industry. Life insurance, you probably have something like that. Critical illness, you probably have something like that. But this is the only product in the marketplace for travel insurance that offers some sort of premium return if there's no claims.
Now, the big thing is you said it was a 30-day multi-trip, 30 days. So if a snowbird was going down for 3 or 4 months throughout the year, it probably wouldn't be suitable for them, would it?
So you can look at this in two perspectives, right? So for Travel 80, you do have the option to basically top up a specific trip. Let's just say you go down there, you're going for 60 days. You have the option to buy another 30 days on top of the 30 days you already have, right? But that will be an extra premium on top of it. So that's a first point of perspective. The second point of perspective is around multi-trip as a general product versus single trip. Multi-trip is for people who generally take smaller trips, but they go back and forth very frequently between Canada and other countries, right? Good example is people who travel for business, right? They go to the US for a week, they come back, they go back again the next day kind of thing. And snowbirds, right? Snowbirds, there are snowbirds out there who just drives down for a couple weekends and they drive back, spend a couple weekends here, then drive back again. So these are the type of clients ideal for multi-trip policies. Now, of course, there are a second type of snowbirds where once winter comes, I just say November or early December, the client just goes down to the US, Florida, California, Maui, Hawaii, and they kind of hunker down there. They stay there until spring comes in April. They don't come back at all. For these types of longer trips, the best course of action here is to get single trip policies. So single trip policies will cover you for a longer period of time per trip, but the downside is that it only covers that one specific trip, not for the next trip after you come back.
Well, that sounds like a pretty interesting product. Now, what about the definition of when it says multi-trip? Do you have to be back in Canada for a certain period of time before, in theory, you start another trip?
Not necessarily, no. So with this individual travel insurance product, multi-trip, each trip starts when they leave their home province, right? So let's just say Gerry and I, we decide to go to Maui, right? We start here in BC. Once we leave BC, hop on a plane or a boat, the coverage will start. The trip will start. And then the trip will end after we come back to BC, after we return to the home province. So that's where the trip starts, where the trip ends. Now, after we return back to our home province, that multi-trip counter, like the days, number of days, refreshes again. They don't need to stay in Canada they don't need to come back home for 24 hours or anything like that in order for that trip counter to refresh. They can spend an hour here in BC, all right, just have a drink at the airport, and then boom, we hop on another flight. That's fine as well. There is no restrictions on that.
Now, does Travel 80, does it cover cancellation as well? Trip cancellation? It doesn't.
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, there's only emergency medical. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. Okay. And what would be the coverage for a Travel 80? Is it $10 million? Is it COVID? Covers COVID and all these other things?
So it does cover COVID as well, because like I mentioned, the vaccination status advisory was dropped. So Travel 80 does cover COVID-19 emergency medical. So Travel 80 is a total of 5 million coverage. Okay. 5 million coverage for the duration of the policy. That number seems high for some, seems low for some, but in most cases, the biggest claims we've seen is the biggest ever is around 1 million, right? Okay. And then most people experience only one of those claims in their lifetime. So 5 million is definitely going to be sufficient.
Interesting. Well, Jonathan, I've truly enjoyed having on the show today. There's been so many great questions, and just to let people know that, we get a lot of questions that come through email or text messages to my personal phone here, and this is where we get ideas for the podcast. And the last few questions that we've been getting are, a lot of folks are trying to get their vehicles down to their residences down in the States. How do they ship them, and how does insurance play into that? Should they have Canadian plates? Should they be registered? So I believe over the next 2 weeks, we do have a special guest coming on the podcast to talk about all the shipping and the insurance and all the things that you have to deal with. So we appreciate all your questions. And Jonathan, thanks again for your time today. It's I know everybody has a busy schedule these days, and I truly enjoyed learning more and more about travel insurance. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast. Our app is available for your iPhone and your Android. If you have any questions, call me 604-612-7526. Until our next podcast, I'm Gerry Scott.